This is the True Crime Nation podcast with your hosts, Todd and Brian. If you're enjoying the show or have suggestions for future shows, you can email us at truecrimenation@outlook.com. And as always, let's start the show. All right. This is Brian. Over there with me is Todd, as always. And this is the True Crime Nation podcast. Welcome back. What's going on, my friend?
Not too much, man. Not too much. We got another interesting episode coming up tonight. We're going to talk about another demented, sick, and twisted serial killer.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Mr. Albert Fish. What's the full name you got over there for this guy?
Hamilton Howard Albert Fish.
Hamilton Howard Albert Fish. This guy was back in the day a little bit.
Yeah, he was
old school 1900s, 1800s kind of thing going on here. So
1920s.
Let's
this is thing.
All right, well, let's jump into it and see what we got here.
All right. This guy is pretty disgusting, so brace yourselves.
All right. I'm ready.
Hamilton Howard Albert Fish, May 19th, 1870, January 16th, 1936. Was an American serial killer, rapist, child molester, and cannibal. Who vomited at least...
Maybe he didn't vomit him up.
He didn't vomit. Kept him down. He might have. Who knows? Who committed at least 3 child murders from July 1924 to June 1928. He was also known as the Gray Man, the Werewolf of Wisteria, the Brooklyn Vampire, the Moon Maniac, and the Boogeyman.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of names.
Where was this guy at? What country, what town, what city? Do we say yet?
I think it was New York. We haven't gotten to that part yet, but we will.
Oh, not bad.
Fish was a suspect in at least 5 murders during his lifetime. He confessed to 3 murders that police were able to trace to a known homicide, and he confessed to stabbing at least 2 other people. Fish once boasted that he had children in every state, and at one time stated his number of victims was about 100. However, it is not known whether he was referring to rapes, cannibalization, nor is it known if the statement was truthful. Fish was apprehended on December 13th, 1934, and put on trial for kidnapping and murder of Grace Budd. He was convicted and executed by electric chair on January 16th, 1936, at the age of 65. So, this guy is pretty twisted. Let's see how he got that way. Early life. Albert Fish was born in Washington, D.C. on May 19th, 1870, to Randall and Ellen Fish. Fish's father was American of English ancestry, and his mother was Scots-Irish American. His father was 43 years older than his mother.
Whoa.
And aged 75 at the time of his birth.
Whoa.
Yeah. Fish was the youngest child, had 3 living siblings, Walter, Annie, and Edwin. He wished to be known as Albert after a dead sibling and to escape the nickname Ham and Eggs that he was given at an orphanage in which he spent much of his childhood.
Ham and eggs. Ham and eggs.
I mean, Hamilton. Ham and eggs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kids were so cruel back in the 1800s and late.
Well, kids are just cruel, period, no matter what year it is. Fish's family had a history of mental illness. His uncle had mania. One of his brothers was confined in a state mental hospital, and his sister Annie was diagnosed with a mental affliction. 3 other relatives were diagnosed with mental illnesses, and his mother had oral and or visual hallucinations.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, he pretty much didn't stand a chance from the get-go. Fish's father, a fertilizer manufacturer, suffered a fatal heart attack at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in 1875. Congressional cemetery records show that he died on October 16th and was buried on October 19th in grave R9689. Fish's mother then put her son into St. John's Orphanage in Washington, where he was frequently physically abused. Fish began to enjoy the physical pain that the beatings brought.
Yeah, the guy had no chance.
No, he was screwed from the get-go. I don't quite understand why she would put him into an orphanage.
Well,
Because she's still alive.
She was nuts, right? She was having hallucinations or something.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And, his dad dying of a heart attack. Well, my God, the guy was 75 years old, 80 years old probably, right?
When he was born.
When he was born, he's 75. So, yeah. I mean, call it what you want. I mean, old age is going to get you one way or another.
Yeah, you're going to die. And he's a fertilizer salesman, so he probably... That probably wasn't healthy back then either.
How'd he even live to 75?
Who knows? Probably drinking. By 1880, Fish's mother secured a government job and was able to move Fish from the orphanage in 1882 at age 12. He began a relationship with a telegraph boy. The youth introduced Fish to such practices as, here we go, urolagnia, drinking urine, and coprophagia, eating feces.
Wow.
Fish began visiting public baths where he could watch other boys undress, spending a great portion of his weekends on these visits. Throughout his life, he would write obscene letters to women whose names he acquired from classified advertising and matrimonial agencies.
Okay.
Obviously, they didn't have very tight security back then. They were giving out names.
Mm-hmm.
And addresses, apparently.
Well, this was 1900, right?
Yeah, well, 19 something. When did she get him back?
He was born in
1882. He was 12 when she got him out of the orphanage.
Born in 1870.
All right. By 1890, at age 20, Fish moved to New York City, where he engaged in male prostitution and began molesting and raping boys, mostly younger than 6 years old. In 1898, Fish's mother arranged a marriage for him with Anna Mary Hoffman, who was 9 years his junior. They had 6 children: Albert, Anna, Gertrude, Eugene, John, and Henry Fish. In 1903, Fish was arrested for grand larceny, convicted, and incarcerated in Sing Sing.
Huh.
Yeah, they weren't messing around there.
So this guy had 6 kids.
Yeah.
There's got to be some fish relatives running around from this dude, right?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, there's got to be a fish line.
Is it Fish or Phi?
Yeah, fish. No, okay. Fish. Yeah. So
he's married to this chick. Mm-hmm. She's how many years? 9 years younger. And they had 6 kids.
Yep. I wonder how many of those kids are messed up.
Exactly.
Fish later recounted an incident in which a male lover took him to a wax museum where he was fascinated by a bisection of a human penis and subsequently became obsessed with sexual mutilation.
Oh, no. Oh, Lord, I think I know what's coming.
Several years later, around 1910, Fish was working in Wilmington, Delaware, where he met a 19-year-old man named Thomas Kedden. He took Kedden to where he was staying, and the two began a sadomasochistic relationship. It is unclear whether or not Fish forced Kedden to do these things, but his confession implied that Kedden was intellectually disabled. You know what that means?
Yeah, he was picking on...
handicapped, mentally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. After 10 days, Fish took Caden to an old farmhouse where he tortured him over a period of 2 weeks. Fish eventually tied Caden up, cut off half of his penis.
There it is.
Yeah. Yeah, we should have known that was coming. I shall never forget his scream or the look he gave me, Fish later recalled. He originally intended to kill Kedden, but he later intended to kill Kedden, cut up his body, and take him home, but he feared the hot weather would draw attention to him. Instead, Fish poured peroxide over the wound, wrapped it in a Vaseline-covered handkerchief, left a $10 bill, kissed Kedden goodbye, and left. Took first train I could back home. Never heard what became of him, and tried to find out. Fish said.
Okay, I wonder if the guy died or what.
I don't know. You would think that
He had to
he
bleed
would.
out.
Yeah, I mean, you would think he would have just died in that farmhouse, or at least if he lived, come forward and said something. But I don't think we ever hear from that guy again.
That'd be
So
a
maybe he
terrible.
did die.
That'd be the most humiliating way for a dude to go, right? Bleed
Yeah.
to death out of his chopped off
With
member.
some dude chopped off your.
Bleed out from your member.
Yeah. No. I think I would have just finished myself off.
Take as many as you
that
can
point.
with you. Just kidding. What do we? Anyway, see this out.
In January
Yes.
1917, Fish's wife left him for John Straub, a handyman who boarded with the Fish family.
Uh-oh.
Yep. Fish then had to raise his children as a single parent. So she left him and left the kids with him.
Oh, wow. She didn't. Do you think she knew what was going on?
I don't know. Who knows?
John
Maybe.
Straub better look out. He's going to get half of his penis chopped off.
Yeah.
Maybe the whole thing.
Maybe the whole thing. And get eaten.
And he,
After his arrest, Fish told a newspaper that when his wife left him, she took nearly every possession the family owned. Fish began to have auditory hallucinations. He once wrapped himself in a carpet saying that he was following the instructions of John the Apostle. Yeah.
what did
It was
he,
about this time. What?
Thou shalt wrap thyself in royal carpet? What? What's going on?
Yeah.
I
I don't know.
that verse.
Well, he was having the hallucinations like his mother. It was about this time that Fish began to indulge in self-harm by embedding needles into his groin and abdomen. After his arrest, X-rays revealed that Fish had at least 29 needles lodged in his pelvic region. He also hit himself repeatedly with a nail-studded paddle and inserted wool doused with lighter fluid into his anus and set it alight.
What? What?
Yeah. Yeah. While Fish was never thought to have physically attacked or abused his children, he did encourage them and their friends to paddle his buttocks with the same nail-studded paddle he used to abuse himself.
All right.
I would call that abuse.
Oh, yeah. Making any kid do some shit like that.
Some sick shit like that. Here we go. Escalation, 1919 to 1930. Around 1919, Fish stabbed an intellectually disabled boy in Georgetown. He chose people who were either mentally disabled or African American as the victims, later explaining that he assumed these people would not be missed when killed.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Fish would later claim to have occasionally paid boys to produce other children for him. Fish tortured, mutilated, and murdered young children with his implements of hell: a meat cleaver, a butcher knife, and a small handsaw.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. This guy is...
He's right up
On
there
July
at the
11th.
top of the rest of them.
Yeah, he's...
Killing
He's right
kids
up
and
there.
eating them. He's probably the worst. Now, I won't say it again. We got a winner. We got a winner.
I would probably say he's probably the worst. On July 11th, 1924, Fish found 8-year-old Beatrice Keel playing alone on her parents' farm on Staten Island, New York. He offered her money to come and help him look for a rhubarb. She was about to leave the farm when her mother chased Fish away. Fish left, but returned later to the Keel's barn, where he tried to sleep, but was discovered by Beatrice's father and forced to leave. 3 days later, Fish killed Frances McDonald. Also on Staten Island, during 1924, the 54-year-old Fish, suffering from psychosis, felt that God was commanding him to torture and sexually mutilate children. I don't think that's a God thing.
No, that's an evil mind thing.
Pretty sure it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy, sick person thing. Shortly before his abduction of Grace Budd, Fish attempted to test his implements of hell on a child he had been molesting named Cyril Quinn. Quinn and his friend were playing box ball on a sidewalk when Fish asked them if they had eaten lunch. And they said they had not. He invited them into his apartment for sandwiches. While the two boys were wrestling on Fish's bed, they dislodged his mattress. Underneath was a knife, a small handsaw, and a meat cleaver. They became frightened and ran out of the apartment. Smart kids.
Yep.
Smart kids. At least they got out of there. Despite already being married, Fish married Estella Wilcox on February 6, 1930 in Waterloo, New York. They divorced after only 1 week. Fish was arrested in May 1930 for sending an obscene letter to a woman who answered an advertisement for a maid. Following that arrest and another in 1931, he was sent to the Bellevue Hospital for observation. Yeah. So they were aware that he was crazy. Murder of Grace Budd. On May 25th, 1928, Fish saw a classified advertisement in the Sunday edition of the New York World that read, "Young man, 18, wishes position in country. Edward Budd, 406 West 15th Street." On May 28th, Fish, then 58 years old, visited the Budd family in Manhattan under the pretense of hiring Edward. He later confessed that he planned to tie Edward up, mutilate him, and leave him to bleed in death. Led him to bleed to death. Fish introduced himself as Frank Howard, a farmer from Farmingdale, New York. He promised to hire Budd and his friend Willie and said he would send for them in a few days. Fish failed to show up, but he sent a telegram to the Budd family apologizing and set a later date. When Fish returned, he met Edward's younger sister, 10-year-old Grace Budd. He apparently shifted his amorous intentions toward Grace and quickly made up a story about having to attend his niece's birthday party. He convinced the parents, Delia Flanagan and Albert Budd, the first, to let Grace accompany him to the party that evening. Fish subsequently took Grace to an abandoned house he had previously picked out to use for the murder of his next victim, Wisteria Cottage at 359 Mountain Road, located in East Irvington neighborhood in Irvington, New York. There he murdered and ate the girl.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
The
police arrested 66-year-old Superintendent Charles Edward Pope on September 5th, 1930 as a suspect in Grace's disappearance. Accused by Pope's estranged wife, he spent 180 days in jail between his arrest and trial on December 22nd, 1930. He was found not guilty because he didn't do it.
No shit. Thank God the legal system was working there.
Yeah, no kidding.
At least after they arrested the wrong guy.
Here is a letter to the mother of Grace Budd. In November 1934, an anonymous letter was sent to Grace's parents, which ultimately led police to Fish. Mrs. Budd was illiterate and could not read the letter herself, so she had her son read it to her. The unaltered letter, complete with Fish's misspellings and grammatical errors, reads, are you ready?
I'm ready.
My dear Mrs. Budd, in 1894, a friend of mine shipped as a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma, Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco to Hong Kong, China. On arriving there, he and two others went ashore to get drunk. When they returned, the boat was gone. At the time, there was a famine in China. Meat of any kind was from $1 to $3 a pound. So great was the suffering among very poor that all children under 12 were sold to the butchers to be cut up and sold for food in order to keep others from starving. A boy or girl under 14, it was not safe on the street. You could go in any shop and ask for steak, chops, or stew meat. Part of the naked body of a boy or girl would be brought out and just what you wanted cut from it. A boy or girl's behind, which is the sweetest part of the body, and sold as veal cutlet, brought the highest price.
Is this guy full of shit?
He's got to be. I don't think there's any historical evidence that this ever happened in China. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think it's true.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. John stayed there so long he acquired a taste for human flesh. On his return to New York, he stole 2 boys, one 7, one 11, took them to his home, stripped them naked, tied them in a closet, then burned everything they had on. Several times every day and night, he spanked them, tortured them to make their meat good and tender. First, he killed the 11-year-old boy because he had the fattest ass and, of course, the most meat on it. Every part of his body was cooked and eaten except head, bones, and guts. He was roasted in the oven, all of his ass, boiled, broiled, fried, stewed. This little boy was next. Went the same way. At that time, I was living at 409 East 100th Street, rear right side. He told me so often how good human flesh was, I made up my mind to taste it. On Sunday, June the 3rd, 1928, I called on you at 406 West 15th Street. Brought you pot cheese, strawberries. We had lunch. Grace sat on my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her on the pretense of taking her to a party. He said yes, she could go. You said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Westchester, and I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped all my clothes off. I knew if I did not, I would get her blood on them. When all was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in the closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry and tried to run downstairs. I grabbed her, and she said she would tell her mama. First, I stripped her naked. How she did kick, bite, and scratch. I choked her to death and cut her in small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms, cook, and eat it. How sweet and tender her little ass was roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body. I did not fuck her, though. I could have had I wished. She died a virgin.
Oh my God.
Could you imagine your son reading you this letter about how his sister died?
No. No.
Yeah.
I would lie. I would say, well, it says this, Mom, and yeah. Why would you even?
Police investigating the letter, the story concerning Captain Davis and the famine in Hong Kong could not be verified. The part of the letter concerning the murder of Grace, however, was found to be accurate in its description of the kidnapping and subsequent events, although it was impossible to confirm whether or not Fish had actually eaten parts of Grace's body. I'm sure he did.
I'm sure he did too. That's not something you lie about.
Good Lord, man.
Why would you lie about that?
This is crazy.
I'm going to tell people I eat people.
Yeah, that's not something you're going to lie about, I don't think.
No.
The letter was delivered to what?
No, I'm saying that's something you're not gonna tell somebody.
You're right. The letter was delivered in an envelope that had a small hexagonal emblem with the letters NYPCBA, representing New York Private Chauffeurs Benevolent Association. A janitor at the company told the police he had taken some of the stationery home, but left it at his rooming house at 200 East 52nd Street when he moved out. The landlady of the rooming house said that Fish checked out of that room a few days earlier. She said that Fish's son sent him money and he asked her to hold his next check for him. William F. King, the chief investigator for the case, waited outside the room until Fish returned. He agreed to go to headquarters for questioning, then brandished a razor blade. King disarmed Fish and took him to police headquarters.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a smart move. Try and kill the cop. Fish made no attempt to deny the murder of Grace Budd, saying he meant to go to the house to kill her brother Edward. Fish said it never entered his head to rape the girl, but he later claimed to his attorney that, while kneeling on Grace's chest and strangling her, he did have 2 involuntary ejaculations.
Okay, come on.
Why? Why are we doing this?
No, what? I don't believe that. Do people really?
I don't know. But I mean, that's how most of these serial killers are, right? They get off on that.
Yeah, but do they really have orgasms without any kind of?
I think they do. I mean,
touching. It's just all excitement based.
Well, he was choking her and she was naked.
Yeah, I mean,
I
hope the hell you tell
so.
me that they tortured the living piss out of this guy.
Well, we're going to find out, I think. This information was used at trial to make the claim the kidnapping was sexually motivated, thus avoiding any mention of cannibalism. So they didn't even bring that up in the trial. According to that.
Admissible.
Let's see. Other crimes discovered after Fish's arrest. Francis McDonald. During the night of July 14th, 1924, 9-year-old Francis McDonald was reported missing after he failed to return home after playing catch with his friends in Port Richmond, Staten Island. A search was organized and his body was found hanging by a tree in a wooded area near his home. He had been sexually assaulted and then strangled with his suspenders. According to an autopsy, McDonald had also suffered extensive lacerations to his legs and abdomen, and his left hamstring had almost entirely been stripped of its flesh. Fish refused to claim responsibility for this, although he later stated that he intended to castrate the boy but fled when he heard someone approaching the area.
Jesus, man.
Yeah, McDonald's friends told the police that he was taken by an elderly man with a gray mustache. A neighbor also told police he observed the boy with a similar-looking man walking along a grassy path into the nearby woods. Francis's mother, Anna McDonald, said she saw the same man earlier that day, telling reporters he came shuffling down the street, mumbling to himself and making a queer motion with his hands. I saw his thick gray hair and his drooping gray mustache. Everything about him seemed faded and gray.
Yeah, he's kind of weird looking.
Which is how he became known as a gray man, I would guess.
Yeah, he looks like he's sick.
Yep.
Just people.
The description resulted in the mysterious stranger becoming known as the Gray Man. The McDonald murder remained unsolved until the murder of Grace Budd, when several eyewitnesses, among them the Staten Island farmer Hans Keel, positively identified Fish as the odd stranger seen around Port Richmond on the day of McDonald's disappearance. Richmond County District Attorney Thomas J. Walsh announces his intention to seek an indictment against Fish for the boy's murder. At first, Fish denied the charges. It was only in March 1935, after the conclusion of his trial for the Budd murder and his confession of the killing of Billy Gaffney, that he confirmed to investigators that he also raped and murdered McDonald. When the McDonald confession was made public, the New York Daily Mirror wrote that the disclosure solidified Fish's reputation as the most vicious child slayer in criminal history.
I believe it.
Yeah,
Still
I'm
probably
not going to argue with that. I'm not going to argue with that at all.
And still hopefully is. I mean, hopefully he is, because
Yeah, hopefully there's nobody worse than that.
There's nobody else out there doing that, but I think there probably is.
All right, real quick. As stated previously, the Billy Gaffney on February 11th, 1924, 3-year-old Billy Beaton and his 12-year-old brother were playing in the apartment hallway in Brooklyn with 4-year-old Billy Gaffney. When the 12-year-old left for his apartment, both younger boys disappeared. Beaton was found later on the roof of the apartments. When he asked what happened to Gaffney, Beaton said the boogeyman took him. Gaffney's body was never recovered. Initially, serial killer Peter Kudzanowski was the suspect in Gaffney's murder. Then Joseph Meehan, a motorman on a Brooklyn trolleyway, saw a picture of Fish in a newspaper and identified him as the old man whom he saw February 11th, 1927. The old man had been trying to quiet a little boy sitting with him on the trolley. The boy was not wearing a jacket and was crying for his mother and was dragged by the man on and off the trolley. Beaton's description of the boogeyman matched Fish. Police matched the description of the child to Gaffney. Why wouldn't you do something about that at the time if you saw
it's New York,
a little kid being drug onto the trolley and then crying and then drug off the trolley, still crying?
It's New York.
That's true, I guess.
Too much hustle bustle. People got stuff to do. They don't care. Figure it's probably his dad or his uncle or something like that. And there's no way in hell this guy's going to take this kid, torture him, kill him, and eat him. I'm just driving a bus here today.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That kind of shit right there.
That's right. Yeah, kid, man, control your kid.
Yep.
Get him off the trolley.
Yeah, just get him off, keep him crying.
So
what they do to this guy, did it say?
Sad. Yeah, trial and execution.
Yes.
Fish's trial for the murder of Grace Budd began on March 11th, 1935 in White Plains, New York. Frederick P. Close, presided as judge, and Westchester County Chief Assistant District Attorney Albert F. Gallagher was prosecuting attorney. Fish's defense counsel was James Dempsey, a former prosecutor and the one-time mayor of Peekskill, New York. I just don't understand how you can defend something like this.
People still do it to this day.
Because he has no money.
There's the defense lawyers out there that do this. I
know, and I don't know how they live with themselves. I really don't.
I mean, in this instance, if you're a defense lawyer, you're just trying to get this guy from not getting killed, get in the chair. That's about it. I mean, you can't do much more than that.
Yeah, trying just to get him life in prison, I guess. The trial lasted for 10 days. Fish pleaded insanity and claimed to have heard voices from God telling him to kill the children. Several psychiatrists testified about Fish's sexual fetishes, which included sadism and masochism, flagellation, exhibitionism, voyeurism, piqueurism, cannibalism, coprophagia, urophilia, hematologia, hang on a second. Hematolagnia, pedophilia, necrophilia, and infibulation.
So they had all that stuff pinpointed and tagged as all back in the day. They already had this stuff to find out and knew what it was, huh? Jeez.
But then we're like, you can go. We don't want to keep you here.
You got this and this and this and this and this. Okay.
Right. Yeah, but you're good. Go ahead. You're not a danger to anybody.
No.
Dempsey, in his summation, noted that Fish was a psychiatric phenomenon and that nowhere in legal or medical records was there another individual who possessed so many sexual abnormalities.
That we know of or that they've caught.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm sure if somebody was as bad as him, they'd eventually find him. They'd be killing people. So children.
Maybe.
Bundy was close. Or not Bundy.
Yeah.
Dahmer. Dahmer was pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Gacy
was a sick son of a bitch. I do not. reluctant.
Yeah, we have yet to talk about that
I'm
one.
reluctant to do a show on that man, but that piece of...
The defense's chief expert witness was Frederick Wortham, a psychiatrist with an emphasis on child development, who conducted psychiatric examinations for the New York criminal courts. During 2 days of testimony, Wortham explained Fish's obsession with religion and specifically his preoccupation with the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. Genesis 22:1 through 24. Wortham said that Fish believed that similarly sacrificing a boy would be penance for his own sins, that even if the act itself was wrong, angels would prevent it if God did not approve.
It's bad. It's one thing when you're going to do shit like this. It's second when you try to use religion to blame.
Yeah. Fish attempted the sacrifice once before, but was thwarted when a car drove past. Edward Budd was the next intended victim, but he turned out to be larger than expected, so he settled on Grace. Although he knew Grace was female, it is believed that Fish perceived her as a boy. What? Wortham then detailed Fish's cannibalism, which in his mind he associated with communion. The last question Dempsey asked Wortham was 15,000 words long, detailed Fish's life, and ended with him with asking how the doctor considered his mental condition based on his life. Wortham simply answered, "He is insane."
Duh.
Yeah. Yeah, you think? Man.
So what they do to this guy?
Right there should have been the end of it.
Yeah.
That should have been a gavel drop. Bam.
Yeah. I hope you're going to tell me some good news about this piece of shit.
Gallagher cross-examined Wortham on whether Fish knew the difference between right and wrong. He responded that he did know, but that it was perverted knowledge based on his opinions of sin, atonement, and religion, and thus was an insane knowledge. The defense called 2 more psychiatrists to support Wortham's findings.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're just trying to get him off on crazy now. The first of 4 rebuttal witnesses was Menas Gregory, the former manager of the Bellevue Hospital, where Fish was treated during 1930. He testified that Fish was abnormal but sane. Under cross-examination, Dempsey asked if coprophilia, urophilia, and pedophilia indicated a sane or insane person. Gregory replied that such a person was not mentally sick and that these were common perversions that were socially perfectly all right, and that Fish was no different from millions of other people. Mm-hmm. Nope, that guy should have been locked up right beside him.
Wrong.
Yeah, that guy should have been locked up right beside him. Because that is not right.
Probably paid to say that shit, you know?
Maybe. Yeah, if he's a witness for the defense. Yeah.
There you go.
Some very prominent and successful who had the very same perversions. The next witness was the resident physician at the Tombs, Perry Lichtenstein.
Lichtenstein.
Dempsey objected to a doctor with no training in psychiatry testifying on the issue of sanity, but Justice Close overruled on the basis that the jury could decide what weight to give a prison doctor. When asked whether Fish's causing himself pain indicated a mental condition, Lichtenstein replied that is not masochism, as he was only punching himself to get sexual gratification. But isn't that the definition of masochism?
I don't know.
The next witness, Charles Lambert, testified that coprophilia was a common practice and that religious cannibalism may be psychopathic, but was a matter of taste. What?
Coprophilia.
And not evidence of a psychosis. That's insane. These people are nuts.
Yeah, they're just grabbing at straws.
If I was a judge, I'd be like, you're getting locked up, you're getting locked up, and you're getting locked up.
Wow.
The last witness, James Vavasseur, repeated Lambert's opinion. Another defense witness was Mary Nicholas, Fish's 17-year-old stepdaughter. She described how Fish taught her and her brothers and sisters several games involving overtones of masochism and child molestation.
There you go.
None of the jurors doubted that Fish was insane, but ultimately, as one later explained, they felt he should be executed anyway. At least the jurors weren't fucking crazy.
Right.
They found him to be sane and guilty, and the judge sentenced the defendant to death by electrocution.
Yes.
Fish arrived at prison in March 1935 and then was executed in January 16th, 1936. That was a pretty fast turnaround there.
That's pretty quick.
In the electric chair at Sing Sing. He entered the chamber at 11:06 p.m. and was pronounced dead 3 minutes later. He was buried in the Sing Sing prison cemetery. Fish is said to have helped the executioner position the electrodes on his body. I can imagine where he had him put him. His last words were reportedly, "I don't even know why I'm here." According to one witness present, it took 2 jolts before Fish died.
Yeah, get his ass.
Creating the rumor that the apparatus was short-circuited by the needles that Fish inserted into his body. These rumors were later regarded as untrue, as Fish reportedly died in the same fashion and time frame as others in the electric chair.
Darn, I wish he would have tortured more.
At a meeting with reporters after the execution, Fish's lawyer, James Dempsey, revealed that he was in possession of his client's final statement.
Oh, God.
This amounted to several pages of handwritten notes that Fish apparently penned in the hours just prior to his death. When pressed by the assembled journalists to reveal the document's contents, Dempsey refused, stating, "I will never show it to anyone. It was the most filthy string of obscenities that I have ever read."
Okay. Not surprised.
So there you go. Yeah, in my opinion, it should have taken about 30 minutes to execute him.
Yeah, like don't turn it up all the way.
Just like zap.
Just
zap.
Just enough to like, yeah.
Zap. Yeah.
How many people this guy killed? Did they have a head count on this dude?
I think, didn't we cover that at the beginning? Stated his number of victims was about 100. However, it is not known whether he was referring to rapes or cannibalization. That's where I couldn't say the word.
Cannibalization.
Nor is it known if the statement was truthful. So who knows really how many he killed.
Enough, I'm sure. Plenty.
Yeah. Yeah, more than enough. Man,
like you said, these guys back in the day, they got away with this stuff a lot easier than nowadays,
Well, yeah, because they didn't have technology.
And people wonder why people want to microchip their kids,
Yeah.
Keep track of them.
Yeah, track them down.
As crazy as that sounds. Well, that's some sick and disgusting stuff. I'm glad that they electrocuted that son of a bitch. And
yeah, I mean, they didn't catch him soon enough. But
why don't you hear about this more? I never really heard about this guy till we dug into it. You never really heard about him in stories and stuff, or on TV or in documentaries, have you?
No.
I just try to keep this covered up.
Yeah, wow. I mean, he was one of the older ones, but still, we've heard about Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
All our lives we've heard about Jack the Ripper.
This guy was worse than Jack the Ripper, in my opinion.
Way worse than Jack the Ripper.
Way worse.
Way worse.
When you got kids in the picture, that's it. You've hit the lowest scum of the bottom of the barrel. Period. So anyway, we'll let the listeners sink in on that, and
yeah, we'll have to marinate on that a little bit.
We'll have to get through this one and see what happens next time. But anyway, it's fun hanging out with you again, as always, my friend.
Man, always fun. Always fun.
Appreciate it, listeners. We appreciate you, and remember,
monsters are real.